Hi guys, Mr. Waffles here. I played Black Ops 7 early at Treyarch a couple of weeks ago, and in this video, I'm going to spill the beans on everything that I'm allowed to tell you from that event. Now, the structure of this video is going to be the following. We're going to talk about the embargo and how I'm allowed to talk about what I saw versus not allowed to talk about what I saw. Then we'll do a big info dump of information, which is tons of stuff that they showed us behind the scenes in this big presentation and in a Q&A, and then we'll move on to a little bit more of my opinion on things and the question of, are we back or are we really not back, Captain? So without further ado, let's talk about the embargo situation. This is something I'm not particularly happy about. It's just very awkward the way that Activision has set this up. So basically, we had this presentation in this Q&A, but then separate to that, we played the game. And annoyingly, I can't talk about anything I saw from playing the game. Like, that is still under embargo, which is basically, if you're not familiar with that term, the phrase that they use when it's like the press are given information, but they can't talk about it until a certain time. Like, annoyingly, what I played is still embargoed. However, there's a ton of stuff in the presentation that is not embargoed, and the Q&A not embargoed, and that means that there's plenty of stuff that you guys will be able to kind of figure out from what I'm saying there that will be very transparent and clear. But it is annoying, because I want to talk about what I played in extreme depth, and I'm limited, and it's almost like, well, why did I play it then, if now was when we were going to talk about half of the stuff? Like, it's a little weird, like, to the point that I was like, should you guys, like, change the event structure here? But Activision obviously have their own plans for things, so it's whatever. So that's the embargo situation. Let's now talk about the presentation, because everything in the presentation that they gave us is on record, ready for distribution right now. So I want to read you a couple of quotes about the foundations of the game, and then we'll talk about the zombie-specific stuff, but it's important to get a feel for what their overall vision is of Black Ops 6 to inform some of the changes they're making to zombies. So, this is a game that was greenlit, concepted, and developed alongside Black Ops 6, supposedly. We always had, this is Treyarch speaking, we always had a unique vision for this title. We're going to get into all the specifics about that later, but they wanted to make sure that the game had its own unique identity, and that's innovations across the three big pillars of the game, and that's campaign, multiplayer, and zombies. So they are seeing zombies as one of the three big pillars of the game, absolutely as they should be, but they reiterated that there, which was good. They then said, at Treyarch, we're obviously innovating and finding new ways to bring things to fans, whether it's co-op in 2008, you've got big map stuff that they've done with Blackout and Outbreak and things like that, and that's the sort of flavor of innovation that they're trying to sort of look for this year across campaign, multiplayer, and zombies. They're trying to just do new stuff for all their players. And the team is then going to sort of talk about that in some depth. Now, this is where the presentation started to split to different speakers talking about different sections of the game. I'm going to give you this sort of mission statement stuff, and then we're going to skip straight to zombies. I'm not going to talk about, like, their new lighting changes and stuff in this video. That'll be a separate video. So, I believe this was Yale Miller talking, or no, sorry, it was now Miles talking, and he said, we've been working on this for quite a while. It really started with this big, chunky statement about unleashing the future of Black Ops. This was sort of the mantra that the team's been working with BO6 and BO7 in parallel, and really the momentum from the success of BO6 and the unique identity that BO7 gives us really emboldened the team and unlocked them in a lot of ways to unleash a lot of creativity and a lot of big innovation ideas and a lot of fun storytelling moments and just different places that they wanted to go to. So they're sort of carving out this idea of unleashing the future of Black Ops, and that comes from these big, chunky vision statements. So, the first one is, embrace the madness. I don't think I need to explain to this group, says Miles, that Black Ops has always delved into the mind-bending, crazy stuff. That's what makes us us. And we wanted to lean into it more with Black Ops 7, and you're going to get that in spades. It's a story that revolves around fear, regrets, and past decisions all colliding in really unique ways to offer unique story elements, character moments, but also locales and gameplay opportunities. And it's distinctly the cutting-edge 2035 combat as well. We're firmly in 2035 in this new era, And what that allows us is to put new toys and new gadgets, new movement into the player's hands to really play with and dominate and master the battlefield. So that's kind of some like overall initial vision statement stuff. The next vision statement is the zombies one, and that's Zombies Unchained was the way that they put it, which sounds very exciting. So they said, I love talking about this because it starts with, again, going back to the team being unleashed. Zombies is bigger. The story is crazier. He then says, I say that, you won't believe me, but believe me, it is. And the story is crazier, and the other thing is we're bringing back the original crew, but not how you would expect them. This is the big twist here, and we won't get into that, but we're very excited to talk about it. The Zombies team is going to kill it. Then they go a little further to say that because we're in 2035, it's not just a new setting, we're also a direct continuation coming after BO2 2025. And I've worked on every single Black Ops game all the way back to World at War and have very fond memories of BO2, but there were also a lot of threads that we left in BO2. There's a lot of branching storylines. We're going to take some of those and craft a final new canon storyline that comes into 2035, Black Ops 7, and we've also woven in, because we had the benefit of parallelly working on Black Ops 6 and 7, so we can pull characters from BO6 and stories from BO6 as well. So they're really reiterating this whole idea that they've got parallel development going on and that they were always concepting both games at the same time. I'm going to be straight up. I think that's a lot of BS. I think that that's not true at all. I think that they were making BO6, and then Activision turned to them and went, one of the other studios is on fire, help. And Treyarch went, oh no, and they had to make Black Ops 7. Like, I'm just going to be straight up, that's my interpretation of events. That is not what the devs told me. That is just me guessing from the outside. But, like, the whole parallel development thing, like, of course you've been parallelly developing it. You've got a live service going on right now while you're developing a game for the following year. Like, of course that's parallel. I just don't think that was always the plan. I'm a little skeptical of that. It feels like it's a little bit of marketing talk, so to speak. So let's now skip over to the part of the presentation which focused on zombies specifically, because I wanted to give you a bit of feel for the world and stuff, but the zombie stuff is what we're here for. Let's be honest with ourselves. So I'm just clicking over. Here we go. In zombies, so this is Kevin Drew talking about zombies, and we saw two things actually. We had the little presentation bit here. We did also then see 5 seconds of cutscene. And so I'll do like 1 minute of cutscene talk here, even less really. We basically saw a continuation of the end of the Reckoning cutscene where the new crew, the new Dark Ether crew, was standing there, and the BO6 crew was standing there, and somebody that was not shown was walking towards them holding like a lantern holder thing with a zombie head inside it. Honestly, it was giving World War II zombies, which is not something that I expect a lot of you guys will be excited to hear, but it kind of had a little bit of that energy to it, but it was genuinely like 5 seconds long, so no idea really what was going on there, who that was, etc. It was just like someone scary walking forwards with this thing with a zombie head floating inside it. Anyway, let's talk about zombies. Here we go. So, Kevin Drew said the following. So, at the end of Reckoning, we got swept into the Dark Ether, and we meet this Dark Ether Black Ops 6 crew. What does that mean? Well, being in the Dark Ether, and I'm paraphrasing here, we're going to get to go to some of the coolest locations we've ever been in zombies, and we're going to absolutely experience things you've never experienced before. So then, he had an image on screen of a Dark Ether vehicle, and we're going to come back to that. So he references that here, and he sort of moves us along. I'm going to come back to that in a moment, so don't you worry. But there's this image on screen, he moves us on, and he says, okay, let's just focus on these 3 big points to call out today. All right, so bear in mind, this is the zombie segment of the presentation. There's been an hour of other stuff prior to it. We finally get to zombies. He says 3 big points. Number 1, new version of the original crew. At the end IGC of Reckoning, we revealed that we're now face-to-face with a new version of our iconic crew from the foundation of zombies, and this is a 3rd iteration And so that's one of the kind of core big things that he wanted to call out. The next is to say that this is the biggest round-based map ever. And for me, it's not just the size, but it's also intent. They've expressed that Black Ops 7 is very much a sequel to Black Ops 2, and that doesn't work, obviously, for the zombie story. Like, the zombie story is separate from campaign, or at least it was back in the day. So they looked at Black Ops 2 as an inspiration and an opportunity to take that experience and say, there's a lot of cool things in here, how can we take that to the next level? And part of that is the introduction of a wonder vehicle, which we'll talk about in a sec, like I said. You'll need that wonder vehicle to navigate and get through the giant launch map. So, to go back to that first point a little bit, let's talk about the crew. Richter Fantacchio, Nikolai Dempsey, third iteration of that crew. Everything that has happened before is still canon, completely canon. Their stories have been told, but now we're on the Dark Ether timeline, and this is the Dark Ether original crew. Now, what's interesting is we actually don't know much about them, says Kevin. We do know a lot about our Black Ops 6 crew at this point, and they're going to be our window and kind of connection point to learn about the new iteration of the Dark Ether crew. And so you might be then wondering, like, why are they important? Why are they in here with us? And that's all going to be told throughout the year. And what's really cool is there are now 8 zombies operators. So in Black Ops 6, there were the 4, like, canon characters. They're expanding that to 8 now, and they can all be played, interact with, have interaction lines, etc., and go through the story together. So that's going to be the new version of Primus, basically, the Dark Ether Primus, and the BO6 crew, by the sounds of it, as well. Very exciting. So, he then says, let's talk about our launch map. Can't think of a better way to really express the Dark Ether and the experiences that you're going to be having this year than with this launch map. He says it's kind of a Bermuda Triangle, featuring locations out of various locations and time periods, each with its own unique story. And I think what really excites the team is kind of bringing back this idea of needing to stick together a bit. And I think Transit did a great job of that, says Kevin, but you had the bus and you needed to make that decision and sort of decide whether you were going to stick together or you were going to roam. I'm adding some sort of paraphrasing there. And especially in this map, you've got to make that decision of, are you going to go together to survive? They wanted to bring more weight to that and that decision. And when you're playing the map, and so especially earlier on, you know, you'll be able to unlock different ways to move across the map, but it's really important to use that wonder vehicle to decide where you're going as a team and move to the next destination. Now, what they then showed us, like the stuff that we were seeing on screen was farm, right? And they said, you're only seeing farm here because we don't want to spoil a lot of this, but farm is actually something, I'm actually going to skip that. So part of that is the transition spaces. Basically, the transitions between the POIs, which we'll talk about in a second, have some fog. But what's interesting about these is that these are going to be living outside the rules of round-based, he said. So when you're in these places, they're very deadly, and there's a pressure where you don't want to be there for very long. And you're absolutely going to want to kind of go through there. You'll be able to see, so it's not going to be as foggy as it was in BO2 by the sounds of things. And you'll be able to discover secrets on those roads as well, but they're just not a place that you want to be in for very long. Each one's also full of personality, each path is different and kind of showcases different elements and time periods as well. So just to pause us there, the reason they're talking about these connecting areas is that they showed us the transit map, basically. And the map is essentially 2 sort of loops connected by a central area, which presumably is going to be the town area. And those 2 loops had POIs dotted around them, and each of those POIs was connected by a very sort of clear linear path and structure, and only some of them were unredacted, but most of them were redacted. So we had big question marks over all of them, so we couldn't see what they were, but farm was on the list, and so we could see farm indeed was a location, but I don't think any of the others were. So there's no confirmation here from me that, like, oh, we're getting a different thing to town, like they're replacing town with something else. I can't confirm or deny anything along those lines. What I can say is that different locations and time periods is something they called out several times here. So I think they're going to be doing a kind of Revelations thing here where different parts of those POIs are going to be from different time periods, and one will be maybe like a much earlier version of Transit. One might be a much later version of Transit in a sort of dark ether mishmash. That's my assumption and guess. That's not based on the stuff that I played, just to be clear. So if that's the case, then so that was sort of the first point that Kevin was making. The second point was the concept of survival maps, right? The idea is to take small locations from their launch map and make them standalone maps. Something from Black Ops 6 that was really successful was Liberty Falls, Kevin says. He says he thinks it was the most played zombies map of all time. And he said a big part of that is just how accessible it is and you have everything you need to survive. And that was really the inspiration for the survival maps. It seemed like a nice complement to a very large, vast map. What's also cool is they were able to take those features in areas that their standard maps maybe take a while to get, and you'll be able to just play in those areas in case you don't have the skill or the time to get to those places, and have everything you need to get your high rounds already from the get-go, and there's no quest. So they'll just be about surviving, basically. So those will be releasing through the seasons as well. More on that in a minute. We'll come back to that. And then his third big pillar of reveals that he wanted to do for zombies was Dead Ops Arcade. So Dead Ops is coming back in Black Ops 7. It's going to be bigger this time, it sounds like. It's bursting with content, he said. You could almost think of it as its own game. It supports their global progression as well. And so you're going to be able to earn towards prestige and weapon camos, it sounds like, and weapon models and all sorts of stuff in there too. And they'll be doing a dedicated reveal for more of that stuff a little later on. So that was all of the presentation. Okay, that was all of it. A few things to note. They showed us the new fog. The new fog is like ground level and kind of rolls around with the player. It's actually quite cool looking fog. So they showed us that. They also showed us the Wonder Vehicle, and it's essentially kind of a Jeep kind of vehicle with an Abomination head strapped to the front of it and a Wunderwaffe-style machine gun turret mounted on top. So somebody can use that, shoot all the zombies. Meanwhile, other people will be driving or probably shooting out the windows and stuff downstairs as well. Sort of like how we saw in Modern Warfare Zombies, except now it's got that Wunderwaffe turret to make it a Wonder Vehicle on top. And we kind of saw this coming, I think, from them doing the Blood Burner and stuff like that. Like, they've been experimenting in this area. This is going to be a continuation of that by the looks of things. So, now let's talk about the Q&A, because I asked some questions in the Q&A that I think were very important questions. And the way these things always go is that they start the Q&A, and a lot of the Zombies guys often don't, they're not super talkative in the Q&As, with the exception of myself. No surprises there. And Chopper. So these questions are all from me and Chop. No one else asked any questions about zombies. So I'm just going to run through what was asked. So the first thing I asked, I said, I'm going to quote myself here, there have been big systems changes game to game previously, like Black Ops 1 to Black Ops 2, Black Ops 2 to Black Ops 3. What core systems changes are you making to distinguish this game from Black Ops 6 so that people feel it is worth the purchase price? That was my question. The answer was, we planned both of these as a cohesive package, BO6 and BO7, and we knew BO7 would be planned around that. It's going to be continuing a lot of the systemic work from 6, so I'd say the purchase would more be about the content you're playing in and experiencing, but there are definitely some new systems. And then somebody else cut in and said, there are definitely new systems to talk about later, there's a lot new. And then Kevin cut back in and said, but the way perks, that's not going to change. So it seems like Kevin in that moment confirmed that the perks system from BO6 would be the same in BO7, but I can comment no further on that. I'm only commenting basically on what he said during the Q&A there. Then someone else cut in and said, the teams worked to make lots of content about this for reveal stuff to come later. So just expect more on that soon. So we're going to get the information. They just weren't ready to share it at this point. So my question about making sure that the game is worth the purchase price was kind of met with a, it's not really a new systems situation, Captain. It's more just, as Kevin said, the experiences you're playing in, which presumably means the maps are going to be what the exciting thing is for them, rather than big systems changes. Now, I'm going to be super honest with you guys. That's not good. In my opinion, BO6 has pretty good gameplay, but if this is a year where it just feels like they could have been maps in BO6, what are we doing? Why are we paying $80 for it? You know what I mean? Like, I worry about that. I obviously don't want to judge it too soon. We've got time to wait still, and I'll talk about this more in depth later and in other videos, but I'm a big systems change enjoyer, and to get no systems changes means that the game is going to feel very samey on launch. It's going to mean that the excitement of learning a new sandbox is not going to be there if there aren't loads of new systems changes. Like, if augments are just back, if perks are just back, if field upgrades are just back, like, where's the experimentation going to be? It's just going to be using them again on a new map, which could have just been a BO6 DLC, right? So that's a concern for me. That's why I asked the question. That was the first question that I asked was, please justify this. And yeah, their answer was, it's about the new experiences. Chop then asked, as seasons progress, will new POIs be added to the transit map? Because they'd mentioned something about this, but it wasn't super clear. And they were like, no, just to be clear, the transit map is the launch map, and it's transit with a couple of extra locations compared to the previous transit. So the original transit, you've got your bus depot, and you've got your farm, and you've got your town. Like, we're familiar with transit, right? I don't need to explain it to you. This is going to be those redacted POIs that I mentioned, which might be future or old versions for them, but it's adding POIs as well. There's an extra 2 POIs, I think, on top, but we also don't know if the original POIs are all there because we only know that farm is there. So for now, all I can say is there are more POIs than transit had, and so they were saying, no, just to be clear, the transit map, like remake, is the launch map, and then there is one survival map coming at launch as well, and that's farm. So there will be more survival maps added later, and we'll talk more about that in a moment because I asked a follow-up question about that, but the launch offering is the transit map and farm as survival, okay? So there's no 2 maps on this game like we had with Black Ops 6. Like, there's no Liberty Falls. It's just a cutout of what's already in the map as a survival map. So I then asked a question about story and narrative. My question is as follows. People are very curious about what you are doing with Takeo. We all want to respect Tom Kane's legacy and what he did for the franchise. Can you share what the plan is going forward with Tom or not with Tom? And I wanted to ask this because we had seen in what they've shown us in the presentation, the new crew, and talked about like this new playable crew. That means Takeo's going to have voice lines, or he's never going to speak, right? One of the two. And it was so important to me to try and get an answer on this point because, like, we've got to respect the man's legacy, and the fact that he's not able to work anymore shouldn't mean that we then just replace him with another person, in my opinion. Like, I think that he should have Takeo now and forever. Honestly, that's my view on things. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the view of a lot of the devs in the studio as well. But their answer was, like, to me saying, can you talk about this? Was simply, not yet. That was that. And they kind of paused, and, like, the room kind of, like, chuckled. And I think they just were sort of laughing because they don't know what happened to Tom. But then another one of the devs cut in and said, just to add in, we're being very respectful of all that stuff. Also, Menendez is part of that. We have a recast Menendez as well. So we're looking at all of that and trying to be respectful and also trying to find a voice that represents the character and brings what we're trying to bring new to it across all the characters, and all that helps us bring them to life. And that sounds to me like that's confirmation that Takeo will be recast. I'm not a fan of that. I'll talk more about that elsewhere, but that's not for me personally. So then I asked a question saying, there was a comment in the presentation earlier when Kevin Drew said there would be more survival maps through the year. Are all 6 of the transit POIs survival maps at launch? And so this is where they confirmed no, and it's not all, and then he cut himself off. So it almost sounds to me like either transit has more than 6 POIs, or we're not going to be getting survival maps for all of the POIs. We're only planned to be getting survival maps for like 3 of the POIs, or something else entirely. It was a bit weird. The fact that he was like I said, are all 6 of the POIs maps at launch, survival maps at launch? And he was like, no, and it's not all 6. He didn't say 6, but it seemed like he was going to say 6. It was just very strange. So like I said, launch will be transit and farm. They said there will be a couple following pretty soon. And so my interpretation of it is that we're going to get farm, and then we're going to get a survival map of like something else. Let's say town, for instance, although, again, I'm not confirming or denying if town is there. I don't know. But we're probably going to get like town survival in season 1. Then we'll get like bus depot survival in season 2. But I then think that they're going to move away from transit survival maps, and we're going to probably get survival maps on whatever the DLC plans are. That's just a guess, though. I've got no idea. So that was the end of the zombies presentation and Q&A section. With all of that said, let's talk about what my opinions on things are. I was not particularly reassured walking out of this event. I am the sort of person that is a big fan of systems changes and stuff like that, and so the lack of confirmation of systems changes was a bit concerning to me, to be completely honest. And I expressed that very clearly to the devs that I was talking to. I think that there's a world where the game is still very good, with the gameplay more or less being familiar to those of us that play Black Ops 6. I think that can still happen, don't get me wrong. It's just a massive missed opportunity to get a whole new year of zombies that for the first time is basically just a continuation of a previous year. And with no knowledge of the full extent of the systems change sandbox that they're going towards, my only guess and assumption is that it's going to feel pretty similar. So I'm worried about that. I'm going to be straight up with you guys. That's a not back situation. In terms of the story, I feel like with Reckoning, they really burned us. And I worry that burning us has sort of sent us into a place now that is going to be very difficult for them to come back from. I miss the old zombie storyline, like, so much. And with Reckoning, this is one of the first times ever where I feel so dejected about the direction they've taken the story in, and in my view, the sort of the room for this to be disrespectful to their previous story and their previous voice actors in Tom Kane, it concerns me a lot. It's not something that I am completely set in stone on, because I think that the zombie storyline is one of those wonderful things that always actually has room to suddenly be amazing, just depending on if the writers are empowered to do their jobs and they aren't being like micromanaged by random execs that are like, oh, well, we need to do this based on a focus group. Like, let the writers cook, then the story will be good. If the writers are not able to cook, if they are like having to crunch on some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles expansion in season 2, then we're screwed. Like, we're actually so screwed forever. So I'm not very enthusiastic about the zombie storyline right now, and that's like a sentence that I so rarely say. Like, I've been doing this for so long. For me, of all people, like, John Story Nerd, to be feeling so apathetic about it is a bad sign. So, story, I'm a little worried about. What I will say, this is an important positive, is that it visually did look nice. The aesthetic of what we saw in the sort of screenshots and little snippets of video on the farm survival map did look good. They just did. It was something which I think has been a problem for a lot of BO6, the facility after facility after facility kind of vibes. It's ironic because going into BO6, they were like, we're done with facilities, because they knew that was a problem in Cold War, and then they just did it again in BO6. So I'm not going to go out on a limb and say, oh yeah, they're finished with facilities in BO7, even though that seems to be the thrust of what they're going for. I don't trust them. Like, I was at the studio and I don't trust them. I've spoken to the devs and I don't trust them. Like, unfortunately, their actions in the past years have not matched their marketing. That's happened several times. And so I am currently seeing steps in a positive direction to make it look more zombies. What I saw of Farm, like I said, from the presentation, was aesthetically pretty fresh feeling. It felt more like a zombies map, which is good. It's really, really good. It remains to be seen if that extends to the entire thing, or if 50% of transit is going to be facility Armageddon. But it was a step in a good direction. So aesthetically, I think their art direction is moving in the right direction. I think that their understanding of that problem is moving in the right direction as well. So there are positives there too. But again, if it's just really gorgeous maps, but they play the same as BO6, I feel like we're missing a leap forward that we could have had, that we've had in every other Zombies year. Like, the engine change from BO1 to BO2 is so huge. The engine change from BO2 to BO3 is so huge. Like, ignoring maps, right? Like people will be like, oh, well, like, there are maps that were, like, in one game, and then they're like, we're back in another game, so, like, it's all the same thing, and, like, all the systems are the same. That's not what I mean. I mean, the game feels completely different, going from every Zombies game in the past to every next Zombies game. The smallest jump I think we've had was Cold War to BO6, and ironically, an even smaller jump now is happening from BO6 to BO7. And like, does that mean that from BO7 to BO8, it's going to be the same gameplay again? Like, what are we doing here? Where are the new systems? Maybe I'm over-indexing on that point, but I worry about it a lot. You guys can let me know if you agree or disagree in the comment section down below. Anyhow, for now, let's do that. Leave questions down in the comments, and I'll do a Q&A video answering the questions as best I can in the next couple of days. We'll also have a bunch of other zombies videos going out today based on the Gamescom reveal, so it's all going to be coming, so I hopefully will see you